How's it going, people? So, this is my first time ever going live on Facebook. It's not my first time ever making a video, but it's definitely my first time ever going live. We just got off of our Friday night call with Self Perfected, and I've literally not moved from the spot. The call ended like 30 seconds ago. I just wanted to jump right on this. So, at the end of that call, Mitch ran an insightful, very brief exercise, and there were some questions as to what a self-perfected world would look like. So rather than just as an idea, what might that actually look like manifested in actuality, which I thought was a really good question. And Mitch, I like how you defined that too, how you broke that down into questions. What would family look like? What would politics look like? What would the world look like? What would you do for fun? What would you do with free time? I think that those are great questions to ask, and although we ran it as a quick thought experiment, I found myself pondering the things that I jot down. And so, just very quickly and briefly, a few of the notes that I took were that in a self-perfected world, or a world where we are pursuing self-perfection and we've actualized it to that extent, I think that I, as an individual, would look like an emotionally stable individual who has their needs met and therefore isn't in a position of suffering. I'm not worrying about paying the bills. I'm not worrying where... I live in the first world, thankfully. But right now, some of my struggles might be that I'm wondering, where is the next meal, where is rent coming from? You know, how do I pay rent? Well, I do my job, that's good. But for someone else right now suffering, it might be, where is the next meal coming from? Now, in a self-perfected world, all of those needs would be met for both me as an individual, which brings me to the next question. What would family look like? Well, my family would look great. They would be emotionally stable individuals. They'd take responsibility for issues when they do arise. We would communicate and interact effectively, and that would be beautiful. And I'd never have to worry. Something about my loved ones even today in the world is that because I have that level of emotional love and care for them, if their needs aren't being met and there's a deficit, I have to worry about them, right? Oh my God, are they okay? Are they going to be okay? They're in this position of hardship. I would never have to worry about that, which would also reduce anxiety, right? So then if we branch out to thinking about society, we've now got a society whose needs are met, and their basic needs are met in every sense. Their anxiety is practically non-existent, I would hope, because each individual is either got no reason to be anxious because their suffering is minimal, or they are in a position where any maybe internal anxiety they may have, they're at least taking full responsibility and ownership of it and addressing it rather than ignoring it, and maybe they feel anxious and go and do something else. So they're addressing those things. Then, what else did I write here? Communities would be the same, right? Because they would interact more, and that's something that, as true as it would be for the individual, it would also be just as true equally for the collective. With regards to education, I thought that this was a really, really pertinent question. Perhaps, to me, the most important question asked in that sequence, because it's so foundational. People, to my understanding, information effectively programs individuals, and it's much like from then they run it like a script. And that's why I think a person's worldview and values seems to serve as a guidance system for the decisions they make and how they choose to live their life, or at least there's an effect there. With regards to education in a self-perfected world, I think that we, instead of having an institution that has a particular agenda of teaching you what to think, I think that the education in a self-perfected world, one, might not have a centralized system of power where this one curriculum institution tells you what to think, but instead teaches you and is honest about what we do know and what we don't know. and what we're speculating and what is based in fact. Things that we can prove, things we can't prove. Things that we are hypothesizing, and the reasons why we are hypothesizing that particular thing. So I think education would actually be honest, and there would also the manipulation of money would be taken out of that equation. Right now, I see it in the world where there are some examples of how money is used to fund particular types of education, to cause people to think very particular things and behave in very particular ways. Any threat of something like that happening would be removed because people's needs are already met. So no one needs to manipulate anyone else into thinking particular things in order to serve them for their own personal gain. That's out the window. And that's huge. That's absolutely huge. And I'll wrap this up fairly quickly, by the way. There's not too much too much more that I wrote down in that short time. I said that politics, rather than being a popularity contest, which is what I largely see it as in today's world, I think that it would become a collective discussion with a purpose. So rather than people just arguing, well, I'm this label, you're that label, you know, I'm pro-life, you're pro-choice, I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican, rather than arguing labels and using words for a popularity contest and taking jabs at each other in debate, I think it would become more of a collective discussion where individuals are expressing themselves and communicating with each other effectively, and that there's a defined purpose for the conversation. So whether it's, in my mind, that works out as problem solving, meaning that there is a problem and people collectively discuss how to resolve the problem. And that means being accepting of what the other side's saying. So rather than just arguing and disagreeing with everything the other person's saying in order to try to get a vote, if those individuals having that conversation are emotionally stable enough to recognize that if they're, I almost said if they're opposition, it wouldn't be opposition in a self-perfected world. If the other individuals bring up an idea, rather than opposing the idea just for the sake of it, they might look at that idea and just say, you know, that's a great approach for this problem. I need to think about that. And they can be accepting of the information and move forward. So politics would improve. Politics would become a collective discussion with a purpose towards solving the problems that do arise and furthering, I almost want to say furthering the growth of the world, meaning we go on, we continue to discover new things, invent new things, and the purpose being that it benefits us and others collectively. And finally, you know, as far as things you'd do for fun, you could do tons of things for fun. You know, first of all, you'd have access to do the things you find are fun. So if you want to travel, you might not have to worry about saving thousands of dollars and sacrificing on your bills the entire time and making yourself miserable so you can finally have that family holiday. Your needs will be met, and if you want to travel, you could travel. And whilst traveling, you could enjoy that. You could see the world. You could broaden your perspectives. You could learn new things. For me personally, I think that's what it would be. I love learning. In my free time, I don't like to party anymore. I used to smoke a lot of pot, used to drink occasionally, never been a big drinker. I used to do those things. It wasn't rewarding, ultimately. It wasn't that rewarding whilst I did it. It was always an extremely temporary, it wasn't true happiness, it was just a high, right? And then even if you go to a party, it feels good, and then, you know, even a party, it ends, the lights come on, it's over. Now what? Back to reality. So I think that in a self-perfected world, I would want to do the same for fun. I think I would want to do very similar things that I do now, but I would have much greater access because I wouldn't have to worry about it. So maybe right now I would read a book that really intrigues me about archaeological structures and digs in Egypt and monoliths and history. But in a self-perfected world, maybe rather than just reading about it and then wondering one day I'd love to see the pyramids and do this stuff. It could be collaborative. I could read about it and then go see it. I could read something and go, oh my god, that's really cool. I think I would like to go see that tomorrow. And maybe you could, because the technology exists. The technology today, for anyone that's got a fairly good understanding of engineering, or has just looked into maglev train transportation technology, for example, understands that they can build frictionless tunnels with trains that travel at insane speeds. And part of the reason that's not happening right now is money. It's expensive. Businesses don't want to do it. There's competitive markets. There's other competitors in the market that would suppress that happening because it would put them out of business. And so this is one of the problems I see with money, right? With money in the world today, people choose to do what's profitable rather than what is good for themselves and all people collectively. And so that's a huge problem. And I think that's another problem that would be resolved if we lived in a self-actualized world, because people wouldn't make decisions for financial profit, and they wouldn't need to, because their needs would already be met. So there's no need to try and profit more or gain more, because your needs are met. Just like in today's world, someone might go and steal food because they don't have access to food, or they might go rob a store so that they can get more money, so they can buy the latest phone, the latest sneakers, and the latest car, and feel cool and feel good. And if that monetary problem I just described didn't exist, we wouldn't have to do that at all. Those needs would already be met, and because those needs would already be met, no one would gain anything from say stealing food. You don't need to steal food if you have food. Makes no difference, right? So those are my thoughts. I did my best to keep it brief, but I probably rattled on a little. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me. And if no one's checked it out yet, by the way, I made a commitment personally, and I purchased the Unlock Fort Knox to an Abundant Life book. I've been reading it. I've not completely finished it yet. I'm taking it chapter by chapter, or code by code, and I'm taking notes every step of the way. And I just want to say that Cameron and Avery clearly did an amazing job on it, because I've read a lot of books. I've been a reader my whole life, and I'm finding it to have a lot of value. And I can see this being something that I read multiple times personally. I think this is something that I'm going to go over and then go over again. So, yeah, I'm not a salesman. I'm not an advocate. I'm not being paid to say this. But it's a genuinely valuable collective of information. And that's what books are, right? People, I'm fascinated by books. I've just got to get this out my system before I wrap this up. But people live their entire lives learning and learning and learning stuff, and it might have taken them an entire lifetime to learn it, to finally put it in book form and share it with you, and you could learn it in 3 days or an hour or however long it takes you to read the material and have it set in. And so books are extremely valuable, and I've read a lot of them, but the Unlock Fort Knox book is really good. I'm finding a lot of value in it. I'm finding that for me personally, it's connecting a lot of dots for me. It's like it's taking ideas that I'm already quite familiar with, but it's connecting the dots in a very linear fashion. And because of that, it's helping me understand it and integrate it more and really have it in me. Because having an idea out here is good, and you can intellectually understand the idea. Oh, cool, you know. But unless it's in you and it's set in, it's just an idea. You're not living it yet. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. Asif, thank you for helping me with that, by the way. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me as part of this group. I appreciate it sincerely. So Mitch, Asif, Cameron, Kian, peace and love to you all. And let's keep doing this. Let's keep doing it. I'm found myself being more responsible on a daily basis because of this, and being more conscientious and conscious of my decision making. So when I have conversations, that's something I've discovered in the last week. I looked at my conversations and I was like, oh my God, so many of them were just purposeless and pointless. You know, me and Asif spoke for maybe 90 minutes and had a really purposeful, cool conversation, which completely contrasted most of the conversations I have with most people in my life. And when I realized that, literally the next day, I've got people texting me like I always do, and people hitting me up. And I'm realizing that, you know, maybe someone's like, hey, how are you? Yeah, I'm good. How are you? Oh, you know, I'm great. I was just, you know, I took my lizard for a walk. Oh, cool. Like, you know, I appreciate your lizard. And before you know it, I've had a 40-minute conversation about a fucking lizard tank, you know? and I didn't take anything from it, really. I mean, I'm happy for them. I'm happy that they love the lizard. But my point is that I have a lot of conversations that don't necessarily have direction. And becoming more conscious of that, I've begun kind of not cutting it off, but I've begun inquiring with the people that I talk to. So if they tell me like, oh, you know, I've been doing this and that, cool, what is this and that? I want to know them. I want to dig in and have a real conversation. So fuck yeah, I'm passionate. Hope you don't mind me cursing or swearing, as we would say. And I hope you enjoy your weekend. I'm only a message away if you need me.